Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all for the second virtual club meeting. It all started because of we could not hold the physical meetings which we used to have every alternate month, and we are forced to start the virtual meeting. Now we have decided we'll have meeting every month instead of alternate month. And once the lockdown is totally and people is prepared to join in, we will have alternate month physical meeting where the virtual member also can see, and alternate month we will have physical, and alternate month we will have the virtual meeting. So every month we'll have club meeting. The whole idea of this club meeting, we have been exchanging views, meeting people. So we have the members, and in the physical format is more than 55. We have institutional member like Dr. Lal, Apollo, Max, PH Public Health Foundation of India, etc. So plus individual members. We've also had committed to open a chapter in Bangalore, but because of lockdown, it all happened. So we will created a new membership called virtual membership as well. So you can see the details. Sanjay is the one who is leading the logistic initiative of this club. So you can also get in touch if you or your organization want to be part of it. Idea is like we have heard Dr. Gupta, I've seen him earlier as well, or Dr. Satish, who are doing wonderful job, how the whole thing can be expanded into. And with the virtual, there are people, membership who want to have it from other countries as well. And it is feasible now. It is the corona is the one which has really taught us all this. Uh, Today, what the format would be that I have purposely kept only two panelists who are from the hospital, who can tell what it is really from the hospital perspective. And may I request the panelists to have your deliberation only 10 to 15 minutes, definitely not more than that. The reason is every time we have been reminded by the club members, that we like to have more time for the question answer. So I will have roughly 25 minutes for the question answer. And that's more important. It is not that what you know and what you want to project, but it is know that what you want to interact with the people and learn from each other. That's the whole aim of this particular club meeting. So that is what, and we have different kind of people who come. We give the opportunity to club members. Members also have the other facets that they get special discount for all the activities of IC like conferences, etc. Today we decided we have how healthcare organizations will have on a revival in a post-lockdown. Everybody talks of money, economy, but there is hospitals. I've been talking to some of the owners are also in quite bad shape because the word has gone around the plant surgery need not to be taken, don't unnecessarily visit the hospital, you might get into it. So there is a behavior changes, and there is also block into everyone that you should not unnecessarily go to that. And second also that they are the one who are treating COVID cases, so it has become more of a psychological barrier. So you might get into infection, so you should not visit. So these are the positions are galore, and we have divided today the panel. One is all about how we prevent the infection and how we can have innovation in the premises, and that is what in relation to post-lockdown period. Of late, I've been reading a lot of literature on and everybody feels lockdown is delayed, but till herd immunity, like Sweden and many countries have done it, achieve, this will carry on. In fact, people even know less than director, even the ICMR or AIMS has said so that you would have peak still to come by month of July. That's why we find every day thousands of cases coming up. Only good point is recovery rate is good and deaths are less. So when you have herd immunity, probably 60 to 70% of population, that's the time that it will go down. That's the viewpoint of WHO and so many other people. So take precaution, but go on. So what happens to really health sector at that time? Health sector doing a good job, but there are also negatives. You might have seen in the paper. Some people are beaten up because of the infection from them. Some are saying you are overcharging and you are not giving enough to the patient. So these are the issues which you working in the hospital will know. Some can be taken care of, some may not be able to take it. I welcome not only my panelist, Dr. D.K. Gupta, who is owning a Felix Hospital in Noida. He is a pediatrician. Incidentally, both my panelists are by default pediatrician. And there is Satish Rath. He is from Aster Hospital, but he, in addition to also having innovations interest. My most of you might be knowing me. I was the Indian Navy as admiral, as a medical person, and have written 2 books, which is all about healthcare innovation. First one got a special Indian edition and also got a prize, international prize of Shingo Award. The whole idea is whole aim of this particular exercise, which has got 2 plays. One is not for profit, what we are talking now. Another one is how price reduction or optimization can be done, yet keep the quality. A wonderful team of people. The logistic will be taken care of by Alok. He will collect all the questions, which we'll ask in the after 2 panels is spoken, and he'll answer, and I'll sum up after 1 hour. And my one more person where the panelists have met is Sachin Gaur, who is double master from 2 European universities in cyber security, cryptography, and mobile security. He is the person who looks after all technology. I tell health problem and he solve it by technology. With the result, he's become more doctor, I become more IT fellow. Anyway, Satish is already IT fellow halfway. So these are the one of the initiatives I may like to also mention that only 2 days back, where Harish Pillai was there from Aster, the national coordinator of cyber security, the Prime Minister of Asia, Pant, who is heading the cyber security, he had told us to develop some cyber security healthcare. So we are first course we are launching in July. Anybody or organization or people who are interested, this is along with the Public Health Foundation of India, PHFI. All technical part has been developed by Sachin and his team, and it has a blessing of the General Pant, who is a part of Prime Minister's office. He wanted us to do so. We'll have many such courses. Now it is only for shorter one, with a longer one, etc., and which will be accredited. That's the whole the plan, because more IT you use, as in lockdown, more problems you will have. Earlier people are only worried of the money. Now even health will be at stake. So that is the whole idea. Is I always give examples that the Vice President of the USA, no less than USA, wanted to speak, but Al Qaeda decided to disable his pacemaker. Luckily, Secret Service came to know, and he was not dropped dead. Otherwise, he would have been so. So these are the good, and artificial intelligence and other buzzword which in September, Sachin and his team will be launching for the benefit of the health sector. So these are the few things we thought we should do something newer and something well. He has been done some hackathon, ideathon, which may be interest of Satish, which he can have a talk with the Sachin separately and can talk how we have done that, or for the government of India, where some 8,000-9,000 people, teams came and people came, etc. We have been doing with Europe. We have some link up with the SCANBALT, which is a consortium of 10 odd countries. So these are the few of these things which we are really looking into. Second panel will be moderated by Sachin, more of a technical part, and that is the one. So I suggest those who have a time, if you can stay back for another 1 hour to hear that particular. Not to waste much time, I have given you overall where all we can be linked up and can do something good to the community. And that's the aim of this particular exercise. I thought we will do something to somebody has talent, somebody has money, somebody has infrastructure. So we are pulling up all that. And we have got a wonderful response from for the physical meeting when we do by rotation with all the institutional member. We have done it in Apollo, Max, etc. So you would find, let's make it more attractive and give us the feedback so we can make it much, much better. I request now Dr. Gupta to give his presentation and try to restrict yourself between 10 and 15 minutes so that there's more opportunity for people to talk to you. Okay, over to Dr. Gupta. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. It's a very good topic, infection, basically infection control and infection prevention in the hospital or clinic. As strategist, I wrote an article and it is published in MedGet also. And I think this is a need of our right now for all of the clinics, all the small, medium-sized hospitals and large-sized hospitals. Initially, the promoters and higher management was not focused on this basic, on these minute things, basically small points on housekeeping, on cleaning, on disinfection. Now I think everybody in this COVID era now focusing on this, because we know the COVID infection is transmitted through, there are two ways. One is droplet infection, means we are coughing, sneezing, or talking. By exhaling, we are fomites or droplets are coming out, and these are inhaled by the nearby people, those who are in our surroundings, and this is the one way. Second is the contact transmission. That is one of the most important part in setup in hospital, basically hospital setup. The contact transmission means somebody who has coughed or exhaled or sneezed, and the droplets have came in the contact of nearby objects like laptop, computer, their desktop, or maybe their mobile phones or table, chair, etc. The contact transmission is also important, and we know with current research that this coronavirus can live up to from few hours to few days on different objects on the basis of temperature and relative humidity of those surrounding areas, basically. So that's why we should be very focused and very vigilant on the disinfection part of these objects in these surfaces, especially the common touched objects or surfaces like lift buttons, door handles, and these chairs, tables, laptop, mobiles, and in the patient surrounding, we call then the patient beds and patient bed surrounding areas like IV stands, like their monitors, thermometer, BP instrument, like there are so many things. Those are involved in the care of a patient. These objects should be regularly cleaned or they should be disinfected. We see there are two processes of disinfection. Like one is cleaning and second is disinfection. We know by the cleaning process we just remove the dirt part of the area and minimally we reduce the like infection part, and in the disinfection part normally we just eradicate the virus or bacteria, those who are can be harmful or those who can be give infection to the healthcare workers or patients. The cleaning part normally we do cleaning with wet mopping or simple, like I have gone detailed in this COVID era only because I was not knowing how we cleaning, how do we cleaning in our hospitals. But now I'm very clear what process even in our hospital right now, every nurse, every manager, everybody knows what is the process of cleaning and what is the process of disinfection. Because it is very important that if you all know, then you can just supervise it and that you can improve it. Otherwise, the housekeeping department or housekeeping personnel or housekeeping manpower, they are not very serious and they are not very educated also. So therefore, supervising should be from everybody who is a paramedical or medical in their floors, respective floors, so that we can reduce or we can minimize the risk of transmission of this COVID and other potentially harmful biological agents. Therefore, that cleaning should be done from dirty to clean area, from higher to lower area, from inside to outside, and it should be bed mopping, so that we should not use any broom or jhadu. There will be aerosol infection that it can be transferred to the aerosol, right? That way. So after that cleaning, we should have triple bucket system in every hospital or every clinic, because that's very important. First, there should be some detergent or some like R2 or a Lysol. From this, we should at least in one mopping we should clean 120 square feet to 224 square feet area, and after that the mop should be cleaned with the normal water, and again 1% hypo should be used after that. And after using 1% hypochlorite, we should give at least contact time of 10 to 15 minutes to eradicate potentially harmful viruses or bacteria. So this is the process of cleaning and disinfection of any surface. Ideally, your hospital facilities or healthcare facilities should be divided into risk zones depending upon the risk area, mean low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. Like isolation ward, COVID isolation ward for COVID patient or COVID suspect patient should be treated at high risk areas, or ICUs or NICUs, labor room, OT, they should be in moderate risk areas. Even the reception and waiting areas and other CSSD and other administration department should be in low risk area. And you can divide according to your risk, depending on your risk. So this is the way, and depending on the risk area, the frequency of cleaning and disinfection should be carried out. Ideally, in low risk area, we should do at least 12 hourly, means 2 times a day. Even in moderate risk areas, it should be 3 times a day. In high risk zone, it should be 4 to 6 hourly. Should be followed universally in all the healthcare facilities in clinic. If we talk about this is the indoor infection control. If we want to control outdoor infection from coming from outside, there should be a screening area outside the hospital, and there should be separate entry and exit point for patients and staff. There should be separate as per guidelines of ICMR. And we should have a hand washing area separate for visitors, patients, and separate for staff. After hand hygiene, I think everybody knows we should have thermal screening. And after thermal screening, this is the most important area, because we have lots of asymptomatic patients also right now with the COVID patient. So there should be detailed triage area, triage 1, triage 2, and triage 3 for clinical screening for the asymptomatic and symptomatic patient both. Like it should be a detailed. You should have a parameter clinical scoring in your hospital or in clinic depending upon your catchment area. You are in hot catchment or containment zone depending on that. And after detailed screening, then patient should be allowed main building of the hospital if it is found to be a low risk or minimal risk. If he is having moderate or high risk, he should be treated in fever clinic or in isolation ward if he requires admission only. This is the way to restrict or to minimize risk of infection getting in from outside. That's one thing. If we talk about the like in again, I'm coming to the inpatient department. So like there now we should infection control nurse and medical officer who is an infection medical officer like microbiologist, their role is very important right now. They should have frequent rounds, indoor rounds, to teach and train nursing staff, those staff, housekeeping staff, GDS, those who are in direct contact with the patient, especially lower staff, housekeeping and GDS. They should have proper protective PPE, personal protective equipment or protective gears before doing their job, depending upon risk area where they are treating the patient. Like if you are treating in the ICU or suspected ward, then you should have full PPE kit. And if you are in low risk area, then you can have N95 mask, gown or cover and face shield. It depends upon the where are you treating the patient. First important thing that we should avoid aerosol procedures. Like those procedures, those have aerosol, they can be potentially like can transmit the aerosol transmission. They can help in the aerosol transmission. These procedures should be avoided. Like or during these procedures, we should have full protection. Like we should have face shield and eyeglasses and mask and 95 mask, and these should be like used before doing any aerosol procedures like CPR, nebulization, endotracheal intubation, ETT intubation, tracheal suctioning, with chest physiotherapy or nebulization. Before doing these procedures, we should be fully protect ourselves. And the most effective and most efficient part of infection control is frequent hand washing. I think I'm telling you late, but it's very important that for 40 to 60 seconds, not for 20 seconds, for 40 to 60 seconds, we should follow all 6 to 7 steps for hand washing, and every healthcare personnel, I think, should do this. There are, I think, 5 movements described by WHO. They are beautiful movements, like we should do hand washing before touching the patient, before doing.
Dr. Can you wind up? Can you wind up just
Yeah,
into?
that's last part. That's last part. Yeah, before touching the patient or before doing any aseptic procedures. And after movement means after touching the patients and the surroundings of the patient, touching the surroundings of the patient like IV stand or bed and etc. And after doing any aseptic procedure. This is the last part, and I am putting at this moment. And I think if we keep all these things in mind, then we can minimize the risk of infection in the hospitals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gupta has been very illustrative things, and other things are that people can ask you more question. I'm more interested in that to clarify, because the people are doctors, engineers, IT people, and others. I'm glad you're also writing. We also, by the way, have a magazine which goes to 85,000 people. Maybe you might write for that, so your experience people can understand. We are also doing some project. We have taken a delegation also to last time to the Sweden, and this time USA, which anyway because of lockdown it was dropped off. So we would like people like you or Rath to become part of the club and also see how these things can be taken forward. I now request Dr. Satish Rath that if you can also tell in 10 to 12 minutes so that we have 20-25 minutes only for question answers. Thank you. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, and always a pleasure. And my apologies also for the last time I could not join your invitation. But again, thanks for having me here. Dr. Gupta has made my job easier. So he has meticulously told all the infection procedures. Especially coming from a pediatrician, this is very, very important because we handle very, very vulnerable and fragile species in the humankind, which are the newborn till they are growing up into adolescence, be it physically or be it mentally. So he has told everything about how infection control has to happen inside a hospital. Maybe I will take a step back and say that how the healthcare system, or maybe the CXOs or the IT folks or the operation folks are looking up to it. So there is no doubt we are going through in unprecedented times, and if we combine and normalize all the reports which are coming up, looking at the data, hospital functions per se are going to be, the new normal is going to be around 70 to 80%. So if we are seeing 100 patients, maybe we have to be prepared to see around 70 patients, or the operations is going to be also like that. The revenues are also going to be that. But in this statement, the very fact, what we have been missing is we have been confusing hospitals as the healthcare system. What COVID has also told us that, hospitals are not the healthcare system. Healthcare systems are from health education to promotion to prevention. Then maybe at the end stage, we should be fixing a problem with tertiary care or quaternary care. The business model has evolved where hospitals have been, seen as places where procedures has to be done, elective procedures has to be done, and most of the revenue actually came from that. So the hospitals have always become dependent on the procedures. And due to COVID, people are not coming for the elective ones due to regulatory shutdown, as well as people are not coming because they are also afraid, as Dr. Singh said, is should I be going to a high risk zone? So in this double whammy, where I'm not getting my elective patients, I'm not doing my elective surgeries, as well as those people who should have come are also not coming because they are not sure whether a hospital is safe to go or not to go. So in this, if we understand the behavioral economics of patients, they are looking for hospital to provide them only one thing. You have to communicate, if you are a hospital owner, that you are hygienic and you are a safe place. So I think, unfortunately, most of the hospitals have not done that or are not doing this. So we can have multiple procedures and protocols, which is keeping our stuff safe, but all our customers or patients are actually outside the hospital premise. And we have to communicate that, we are doing this safe. If you just take an analogy, like you have Arogya Setu app, you have Zomato, and you have all the big restaurants which have shut down now. If you order for something, you will see that this rider who is serving you the food is in the normal temperature and he is using Arogya Setu app, and the kitchen is actually following all the sanitary, necessary, protocols. So same way, one particular part is hospitals have to come out through their website or through their social media that we are following all the protocols which have been very nicely told by Dr. Gupta, which is patient-wise understandable, that we follow this, so you are in a safe environment. But on the other side, there is also a responsibility on the patients, which was very difficult for hospitals to expect in the participatory healthcare, whether patients are going to also contribute to their own healthcare. So you have to put, few things which are innovations in the recent area is, if you can always mandate patients who are coming to see you to have a Arogya Setu app. You can always mandate to have them a digital triage, have you been doing this, or are you exposed to this? And if you have to have a consultation with us, you need to have a Arogya Setu app. Then, as they enter, let's say a physical triage and a digital triage, the difference is digital trials are always very, very effective. They are extremely low cost and extremely high scale. So mostly, let's say computer vision based applications or camera based application can tell you that, whether the areas which are low risk, moderate risk and high risk are maintained or not. Now algorithms are available to tell whether people are maintaining social distance between themselves or not, and it can alert the security at the CCTV center. It can also identify whether people are removing their mask where they should not be removing. Are they putting the mask all the while, when they are? And it can also alert, and you can enforce that, okay, you are supposed to have the mask and you are not supposed to have the mask. Then it can navigate that, while the people are there in the hospital, as Dr. Gupta said, that, there are different zones. There is also inside hospital a red zone, orange zone, or a green zone. And most important, it is for not the staff, it is for the patients. The patients also need to know in a very, very non-invasive way and a non-scary way that in which zone they are going in. Maybe there are color-coded beacons, or there are LED lights, or there are markers which can tell that you are entering a green zone. Now this is the orange zone, or now this is the red zone. And most important is, as we are fighting as doctors, or our staffs are fighting as doctors, it is very important also. Infection puts a lot of mental stress or mental health problem. So what at Aster we launched is, along with the digital trials, taking a digital profile of a person before they are getting into, let's say, consultation, we launched mental health support for all our staff, free of cost. So these are chatbot-based applications which are going to counsel you, which are going to give you support for your anxiety time and difficult times. And nobody other than us actually knows it better, that how difficult our healthcare staff times they are going through. So they can just download an app, can go through mental counseling, and this is like having a therapist or a counselor with you 24/7. And you are actually not spending into tens or hundreds of psychologists or counselors to have it as part of it. The third part, which I would just say and then conclude here, is we need to also, like we have arranged areas based on their risk, we need to also look for technologies which are available now. So we are using one of them. If you have a high exposure area, can I monitor that remotely inside the hospital? So most of the time we have been thinking that remote monitoring is where we are monitoring people outside. But inside the hospital also, maybe the equipments and the high acuity setting and the highly trained staff should go in batches. So if I have 30 people for my ICU, I can actually run them with 5 shift. And they are there for most of the essential stuff. Most of the parameters of the ventilators or the infusion pumps or the HIS or the nurse notes or the, let's say, the input-output charts, everything can be actually seen virtually. So the intensivists who are actually managing most of the risk zones can actually manage it through remote monitoring within the hospital. So what you are doing is, actually, if you have 30-member staff, you are actually sending them in 5 roster each. So in any case, you have to expect there would be some infection, there would be some leakage, and you have to shut down or you have to quarantine most of that batch. So instead of quarantining the entire 30 staff, and what we saw in many of the hospitals where the entire hospital was asked to shut down, I think that was improper planning. Instead of that, you actually need to have a central dashboard where you are monitoring through CCTV, whether patients are maintaining the social distance or not. You are also monitoring your healthcare workers through remote monitoring of ICUs, whether they are maintaining the proper infection control or not. And I'm happy to share the case studies, which are going to publish very soon now, where you can actually keep your staff safe, you can keep your patients safe, and you are actually doing all these things not by investing a lot of money, because this is the most important part. If you have to also invest into these times where you are not having your cash flow, that is going to be a very, very difficult part. So that's where you have to look for open innovation, where you can actually invest the minimum, but you can get the maximum outcome. So maybe I want to conclude by saying that definitely we are in very, very difficult time, but the good part, as I see as part of it, is it has enhanced the adoption of technology. So as healthcare providers or doctors, we have been always blamed as the late adopters of technology. So this part has definitely enhanced it. So thanks to COVID for that. Most important part also, as hospital providers, we have always struggled to teach or educate or expect the patient to participate into their own healthcare for lifestyle or for discipline or let's say for compliance. And COVID has also done that, these were the two difficult parts. And when we come to regulatory aspects, how governments have been, not so futuristic in thinking how healthcare systems should be really, going forward, taking advantage of technology. So government has also now opened up, use of telemedicine and more use of technology, which is the normal, natural way. But unfortunately, we have to wait for a COVID for this, regulatory opening up to happen. So maybe these three things I would say, and then, love to take questions. Dr. Singh, you are on mute.
We are not able to hear.
Dr. Singh, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Pardon? Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Rath. The issue which you have brought in fact, I am a firm believer, which most of many scientists like you also, that every crisis also has certain plus points. Second World War has brought the industrialization to that because out of compulsion. Many management principles like PERT, CPM were brought in because they were used for the war machinery development on a time-bound manner. So COVID also would bring many such issues, which will be good for the in future of human being. Everybody is saying it will go on for a couple of years and it will become from epidemic to endemic. And some cases will always pop up in the ecosystem like flu. Flu pandemic, now also flu is there. One odd cases is come up time to time. So these are the few issues which really will take forward. And there is also many people are written. There are book on the subject as well. There's somebody, I advised him to collect the data of 20 years, 30 years from the MAT department and see how diseases have changed. So there is also one of the hypotheses one can construct. In fact, I'm working on that how earlier all these climatic changes or pollution and how they've changed the disease pattern. Nobody heard of chikungunya, dengue has come. So similarly, there is some linkages. This could be. Anyway, I'm thankful that you may like to take some of these issues. Infection is one. Antibiotic resistance was also in the past. Now there's a new dimension of work which you may like to take it for the good of the humanity. I hand over to Alok. You can float your questions, and we will give slightly more time to the panel too, because there are 4 speakers in that. So, and they're technology based, etc. Yeah, Alok.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, and thank you, Dr. Gupta and Dr. Rath, for sharing the valuable information. First question which I have got is how hospitals can play active role in innovation rollout.
So is that the question?
Yeah, that's
I
the
can
question.
take that. Yeah. So, before saying this, now innovation is no more a luxury word. It is very much essential, for hospitals to survive. And also it is very challenging in these times because you might not have a very separate innovation budget, but this has to be a survival budget. So you have to actually take a very prudent as well as a very practical approach into what you are investing into, because you might, if you invest into something, you might not be able to invest into something else. So that's where I think open innovation works actually very nicely. The model of open innovation is you don't innovate by building it inside your premises. You innovate by partnering with the best of the startups. So if you see also, which is the model at Aster we also go for, is we won't be building any solutions inside, but we would be leveraging the startups. What the startups need, why they should work with you for free, because they need the insight, like all those details in protocols regarding disinfection, Dr. Gupta talked about, are actually music to the people who are making, let's say, robots for disinfection inside a ward. So let's say, we are going to launch, a robot for disinfection and cleaning inside a hospital in partnership with Wipro. So Wipro knows how to make the robot, but it doesn't know actually what are the protocols of disinfection and where it is needed, what kind of surfaces it should traverse. The first demo is already happening in Victoria Hospital in Bangalore. It is already in action, and second one will be happening at Aster Bangalore, where we are participating to them what we need out of this. And the cost, how we are actually planning for it is actually equivalent of the manpower cost, what would have costed us anyhow to do all this protocol cleaning. And that is actually being offset by using a robot, which is much more efficient, which is not going to get tired, and which is also going to give a certain sense of completeness into doing this. So whenever you're looking for new innovation taking up in this new time, don't fall into the trap. If you are a small hospital, into the Microsofts or the Googles or the, let's say, Alibabas or the IBMs, that might cost you a lot. You need to budget it also appropriately, that you partner with a startup which is also equivalent of providing you that, and look for a time-bound outcome. What Dr. Singh was saying, this is something which is going to be very important. If your innovation action is not actually time-bound, you might not get that support from management going forward. So these three things, if you take care, I think you would be in very good hands.
Thank you, Dr. Rath. We have another question which says, what are the top 3 problems that hospital will be looking for solution in next 3 to 6 months?
Could I answer?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. Yes, Dr. Gupta.
Yeah. Next 3 months, number one topmost problem will be the reduced cash flow, because our OPD are decreased, our elective surgery are decreased, and lab pharmacy is proportionally decreased. Therefore, the cash amount that was coming previously before this COVID will be decreased. Most of the patients will be in indoor patient only, and there will be only from the panels basically. Either they are private health insurance or they are government. And we know that from government there is a recovery problem, and we have a lot of data in government. So therefore, most of the problem, when the hospital has to solve this problem of decreased cash flow basically in next maybe not 3 months, maybe for next 6 months. Second will be the hospital infection control. Infection control will be the second most problem, because now we will, all hospital will have COVID positive patients, and they have to make their hospital safe for non-COVID patients. Therefore, they should have very strict infection control policy or SOPs inside the hospital, as we have already discussed. Third will be retention of the human resources, and because of this demotivation of COVID, and there are a lot of the nursing staff, a lot of the paramedical, they have moved to their native places and they are not coming back. Therefore, the retention and training of these and motivation of these human resources will be very important for the hospital. I think these will be top 3 the common problem we will facing in the coming months.
Thank you, sir. Our next question we have is, how can non-medical people be supported to solve medical problems in India, as infection control requires lot of engineering solution? Shall I repeat the question?
Can you repeat that question? Yeah.
Sure, sir. How can non-medical people be supported to solve medical problems in India, as infection control requires lot of engineering solution?
Yeah, so this is a very good question. I think, this is one of the models for why we established this Excel Innovation Lab is newer solutions are always going to be interdisciplinary. So it would need what is the problem? So let's say somebody from the domain like Dr. Gupta, it would always need a person from the engineering background who is, who can actually build it. It can be chemical engineering, can be life sciences engineering, can be biomedical engineering, or can be pure software. And then you need a stream which is actually understanding the behavioral economics and health economics as part of it. So we have to look into the incubators which hospitals need to start setting up. So let's say like at Aster we are setting it up, or let's say which ICMR is supposed to do, but I will say maybe not so effective in doing that. So that's where, whenever pandemic has happened, we are looking for, we will buy ventilators, or we will get ventilators, or we will wait for the vaccine, which will come from the Western world or from Japan. But you will find very hardly doctors speaking about, I can solve this by doing this new protocol, or I can solve this by making this new mask, or I can do this by making a new way of treatment, or I can know. So that engineering aspect, I think somewhere unfortunately is missing in the doctors community. So unless doctors invent for themselves, it is never going to be a proper medical solution in future, which is actually the course, what you should be really taking. So this course has been also a bit diluted in our medical teaching curriculum. So we are trying to actually, enlist a course on digital health, which would be given to doctors. So to tell them about digital, and also digital health to the engineers, that, what is actually needed as physiology, what is needed as, hospital, operations, and the, preventive medicine. And this is very, very essential. So you actually asked the most favorite question of mine. To have sustainable solutions, we need this interdisciplinary team. It is not a job of one man's, role that, I can actually roll out innovation single-handedly. It has to be a team, and it has to be a team which is minimum, let's say, oversimplifying it, has to be a combination of people from medical background, engineering background, and MBA background, so that, it is sustainable in the long run.
Thank you, sir, for sharing the information. One more question we have. What are the kind of digital innovations you foresee for COVID, apart from what is already there?
Uh, so let's say, if you see, actually, Dr. Gupta said it very nicely that, the challenges we see or as hospitals is we always consider our customers as people who are inside our hospitals. So hospitals are actually facing two-pronged or double-sworded or double-edged problem, right? So our elective cases are coming down. So my incumbent customers, which were my loyal customers, are coming down. But I had also done a mistake of thinking that, those people who are my customers who are staying outside the hospital, I cannot serve them. So let's say, be it pediatric care or be it most of the chronic care. Chronic care is the largest population base, which doesn't need a hospital. So digital therapeutics, which is called as the new evidence-based, let's say, chronic disease management solutions, are going to be the big necessity and essential services, which hospitals should see as a sustainable stream of revenue coming forward. Second stuff is you see the importance of the 1mgs or the MD Life or the ThyroCare lab and this and that and everything. So hospitals have to very carefully think now, should they be investing into a radiology or a pathology or a pharmacy kind of a business, or they should be partnering with somebody who is actually doing a national level, let's say, digital pharmacy, digital appointment management system, digital pathology, digital radiology. And this is going to take actually a lot of leaps and bounds. So hospitals have to be ready to either partner with them, so let's say take some pie of the profit, but also they are not investing into capital as a part of it. They are not investing into a radiologist or a pathologist or a microbiologist or a let's say these kind of resources, not also into the infrastructure, but getting it as a business, as an operation. So it's an operation as a service kind of a thing. The third thing which will be very huge, which is actually for the medical industry and pharmaceutical, is things like hand sanitizers, hygienes, PPEs, then let's say mental health, then let's say telehealth. These things are going to be increasingly, becoming more and more important, and more for pharmaceutical. As you see, the rumor, Gilead and AstraZeneca might merge, the largest merger in this ecosystem. So life sciences research is also going to be an important part. So I see this as community management using Arogya Setu and telehealth app or these kind of things. Then hospitals to look for outsourcing their services, which can be really outsourced due to digital innovation like pathology, radiology, and infection management and other things. And hospitals should actually get very aggressive into the chronic disease management. How can I serve my patients without asking them to come to my hospital in a sustainable way? So these 3 or 4 I see are big things, which is going to happen in the coming decades.
One
Thank
more
you, sir.
question we can take. Yeah,
Yes, sir. So this is a question for Dr. Gupta. Sir, any innovations that you are planning to pilot in your hospital as our community can contribute?
Yeah, we are already in process. One of the robotic company based in Noida only, and we are partnering with them. The robotic, basically, just here, Dr. Rasa told, that they are also doing the same thing. So we are have one pilot project with them, and we are having trials for the robotic delivery of medicine, delivery of food, robotic disinfection, UV light disinfection. So we are doing these things, and these robots can do thermal screening also. Like, we are in the process of these development of these robots, and we have done successful trials also, and we have donated 3 robots to government facility in Noida also. These we are in the process of these.
I have a quick comment actually. So maybe I needed Dr. Singh as well as Dr. Gupta's feedback on this. This thermal screening, I'm actually a bit worried about. It's like sending a person with a non-ICI certified helmet to ask for go for driving. As we know that most of these patients, 60 to 80% of the patients are asymptomatic. So by doing a thermal screening, somewhere we are giving them a false sense of security that now this person is not having COVID. Whereas barely we are looking for temperature, which is also not a very 100% prevalent, let's say, symptom in the people. So now as the malls are opening and let's say shops are opening and trains are opening, this has been mandated. So I would say the thermal screeners have been a very good seller in this ecosystem to say that, yes, this is one of the, tools for screening. And this has actually spread very, very, badly. So I'm more worried about does it give a false sense of security where it is actually not. So
Yeah. So thermal screening definitely is a false, like it's not, its results are not very good, and we cannot rely, because we know that there are so many pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic cases, around 60 to 80% in different parts of the world right now. In India also there are around 60-70%. Therefore, thermal screening should be backed up with a clinical screening also, I told you. Like you should, it should not be fever only, it should not only cough only, there are other symptoms of COVID also, like loss of appetite, fatigue, in like no smell. There are few symptoms, so the high risk areas, containment, it should be combined with, because right now ICMR is not, and government of India is not supporting us in doing the treatment for all the patients right now. They are only asking for the treatment with the ILI symptoms or SARI symptoms. Therefore, we have to follow the guidelines of government. That's why it's really not very effective, but it's one of the first part, thermal screening, one of the first part of the whole screening, I think.
absolutely.
Thank you very much. And I think this is require a lot of deliberation. And the best thing is what I can feel is I'm not going to leave both of you anyway, because and we are going to do something in the both our hospitals, also Felix, which is next door to our office. We can practically do something there, and also adopt idea of Satish to do so. In fact, we have already launched initiating Hospital Innovation Screening Committee. We are strengthening it. You'll soon hear. We have already got a link so that all these ideas, thinking, brainstorming in a smaller group, we can do so. As you may not have access to everything, what I suggest, of course, I've got 2 people. Sanjay, the logistic person whom you know. Any of your problem,
attending your training program, cyber security, screening committee, you can send it to him because so many email, I don't want to bore you, and he will ensure it is sent to the right person and then directly people get in touch. Alok has been my technology fellow, another one. If you want, you have it. He has been testing you all people. You can also write to him as well. Sachin will be also following after my discussion, and he will also emphasize on it how we can take it forward. I'm really impressed with my both panelists. They are with good ideas and also sincerity rather than telling what their organization is. And they really want to do something. And I'm for it, always and ever. We can do something together. Yeah, the issue at large is that suddenly COVID has become one of the place where all have to be woken up. Make in India, a lot of new issues. We were only giving 1% of our GDP, include the private GDP, private hospitals included. It became something like 2, 3%, 3.5 or whatever. So how much we are really doing for prevention, which was really our public health, which is the core issue. And that can be on the basic issues after so many years of independence, quality of life. I was listening to the Prime Minister of New Zealand who says, I'm COVID free. See that country, what is the quality of life they have. They even clean their normal water tanks, which in Indian they call it a tal or pokhar or whatever, and how much muck is really thrown into the river, etc., including the leftover of puja ka saman, etc., whatever. How much is really needed is the literacy is not the only thing. Even educated people do so. And the behavior changes is the one which is most difficult. We hosted Israeli delegation, he says we do something on behavior. So I feel for this panel that we have to go together. Think of quality of life and prevention if you really want to win over the quality. And if that is the so, the issues which will come, biggest issue, even for literate people, the behavior changes. That is what Sachin is. We are soon launching a awareness training program for diabetes. That is one because we have maximum people as onto this particular, and that is also comorbidity will increase the morbidity of the COVID, etc. The behavior changes is one. There are educated person who told me, मैंने रसगुल्ला खाया था लेकिन धोखे खाया था. Now, if that is the person, and everybody talks about behavior, and that is one very difficult to change. They say, चलो यार आज एक और हो जाए on the road, चलेगा, नहीं होगा, etc., etc. So, to nutshell, really to conclude this, I am so glad that both of you are with us, and I am not going to at least spare you for the community good. You are doing a wonderful job, and we'll take it forward. We'll also get linked up wherever, whatever we are, and can we think of all these initiatives, what we can take it forward and achieve. We have a long way to go as far as public health and preventive is concerned, really so. Now we have woken up, but that is also very limited way we have woken up. The literacy changing, even washing hands, where Dr. Gupta have been also, I started one of the person in accreditation of the hospital in the country. WHO has been talking about it, but how much really even doctors have been washing in that protocol. I mean, let's be very frank on it. Thank you very much. And I hand over now to Sachin to take it forward. And we will keep talking to you in individual capacity. And also ensure that we do something together. Okay? In project more, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And I also felt very nice listening to both of you eminent, people in the health sector. And I would request if you could stay for the next panel. It would be very good because we are going to discuss solutions. So in case if you are interested, you have a solution right away. And that has been the philosophy of Innovation Curious, which is to be a matchmaker, where we have an ecosystem of people like you who are at the receiving end, and we also keep scouting for innovations, on a daily basis. So thank you very much from my side as well, both Dr. Gupta and Dr. Rath. Thank you very much. And now I warm welcome to my co-panelist. So some of you are known to me, Dr. Amit Raj. You are working today.
Yeah.
And good to see you, Dr. Saurabh, for the first time.
Hi.
So we have been talking a lot over the phone, and I have also not met Rohit. So it's a good opportunity for me, Rohit, to meet you, at least meet you. Dr. Partha has been our advisor now for a long time. So he has been a guiding force for us for some time already. And he is also one of the technocrat that I know, or, wearing two hats very comfortably, clinical and, also for most of his career, I believe, dealing with technology. So a warm welcome to all of you. And I don't know how much of you could hear what our previous three clinical background people shared, but it was a lot of good learning for me, and it's also good to see a positive attitude when it comes to problem solving. And I believe in all of you there is an entrepreneurial spirit in solving the problems, and that's how we fit this panel into the first one, more like a jigsaw, because we were presented with a lot of issues, and at least two of you are active clinicians also in this panel, Dr. Amit and Dr. Saurabh. So you are not far away from the daily problems. So to start with this, panel discussion, if I may invite you one after another to, quickly introduce yourself, right? And also to make it more human, if you could just quickly also add to it your Corona journey for last 2 months, what you have been through, maybe, very quick round of introduction. So starting with Dr. Partha, if I may ask you.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
This becomes my first starting point in any web conference. I have started talking in other conferences, and after 2 minutes, I realized that nobody has heard me. So rather than saying hello, I have now started using "Am I audible?" And I make sure that every time I start speaking in any web conferences, this is my first one. Thanks to we all are using technology, and certain times it is better that we test it before we start using it. So this is the first testing. The COVID journey is a interesting journey for us. So I left my formal job and started on this startup journey. In the month of January, we have started, and March we signed some contracts with some people, and we thought that okay, we are good, and now we'll be kind of having some work to start. And I was traveling. I came back before 15th of March, and I had to travel after that. And fortunately, I have not. Otherwise, I probably till now would have been in that city where I was planning to go. And then I came back and got stuck. So, and our contract with some of the organization could not proceed because a couple of them were diagnostic company, and they had to shut shop. They're in Delhi, and then we all got stuck. So then we start thinking, hey guys, if we are all sitting at home, this becomes an opportunity rather than just thinking about that, our business got stuck, what we'll do, or all the plans have gone for a 6. I used to get a salary till December. Now I don't get my salary. Then what happened to me? And there's a lot of other questions, right? And so 2 things I did. One, definitely some social work. And I thought it's important to talk about that, as you said, that to add the human angle. So in Gurgaon, I work for one organization where primarily being Bong, we do Durga Puja. And as a part of that organization, we tried to support many people who were deprived of food. So we cooked food and then supplied to many people. So that was one of the 1.5 months around less than 60 days, not 2 months, we did that work. And that got me busy between morning, let's say 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So that was really a good thing that we all felt at least good about it. We were all little tensed also, like what is happening outside, and we may get infected. But fortunately, I hope I have not, or even if I have, I don't know. Now that's the beauty of the disease. You know, there are a lot of times that we all have probably gone through this and developed some immunity if we have, and then we don't know about it. So that's where we are. And on the professional point of view is that we invested that time, and we kind of followed what Rohit was doing, and tried to develop some solution. Say that, okay, can you detect something using chest X-ray, and can you add something more than what our thermal scanning was doing, right? So Dr. D.K. Gupta and Dr. Rawat was talking about the thermal scanning. I think this is more psychological, right? A person is having a temperature, hopefully he would not visit a large gathering, right? So there is another angle to it. So that's something that was keeping us busy, Sachin. Thank you.
Thank you for elaborating on your personal journey, Dr. Partha. Maybe I'll come to you next on the professional part more. But to quickly complete this first round, Dr. Kul Saurabh, if I may ask, what's your personal background and if some thoughts on Corona for last 2 months?
First of all, thanks for the invitation. And like when I myself is an intensivist working at Fortis Escorts. Regarding this Corona journey, once it started in China, people were like taking it in kind of mockery. People are not understanding it, and we being the clinicians, in spite of knowing the magnitude, maybe our health system was not that taking it that serious. Maybe we are not anticipating that we will end up into this kind of crisis. But somewhere in back into our heads, we intensivists knew it. Once it is going to land up in India, then we might be reaching this same stage. But despite knowing these kind of facts, these anticipations, uh, nothing could work out to stop it. Despite every kind of effort being taken and new policies being framed, every time we see a loophole into a new policy. So all kind of changes that has been brought into the health system, they have somewhere been overpassed by this ongoing pandemic. So with all these challenges, I think we need to go day by day, day by day, day by day. And we clinicians have been trying at ground root level, and ICMR has also been changing its guidelines. I don't know on what kind of facts they have been doing it, but for clinicians, healthcare workers, it has actually become very tough and challenging. But still, I feel with challenges come opportunities. With every challenge and every new day, we are facing a problem. With these kind of problems, we are learning new things. And today, I have also framed some kind of idea to fight up this challenge. We shall be discussing it in like coming up the session.
Yeah, thank you. So, Dr. Amit, I believe you are holding the Govardhan Parvat. You have the burden of running the hospital, and you are in the center of it. So, please share what's happening for last 2 months and maybe a very quick introduction about yourself.
Well, am I audible? Like Partha said, I mean, am I audible? Because my is a bit low at my end. Yeah, there's some network issues. Yes. Well, we expected this, as Dr. Kaushik had mentioned, that clinicians, were having some kind of a clue that this kind of pandemic is expected, and how it's going to span out is one thing which we all debate. Well, like what Dr. Kaushik said, that this is a tough time. We from Plexus Cardiac Care, well, I run an institute called Plexus Cardiac, where more focus on interventional cardiology and acute, cardiac care, both in the hospitals, and we've been having this digital rural, program which has been running for the last 12 months, and we wanted to just see how we could proceed with this digital business plan which we have,
in this COVID, and we were aggressively working, towards prediction of what's going to happen in December and Jan. And by the time COVID could come in, I mean, in the month of March, we were ready with solutions which we already had, and kind of ensure that we are, implementing these solutions, and results are pretty, phenomenal. As we proceed in our discussion, I would like to also share what our company has been doing and what we could, really come out with innovative solutions. But as Dr. Kaushik said, I completely agree with him. Clinicians need to be prepared. We need to, as hospital entrepreneur, we need to safeguard our resource. We need to safeguard our workforce. We need to safeguard our assets, our medical equipment, and as well as ensure that our existing patients who've been affected, we reach out to them and ensure that they are safe and secure, and we kind of work for the society. And like what Dr. Partha also mentioned, a social service. Yes, initial few weeks we went on ground. We did a lot of all the social service which we need to render. But we felt, yes, coming back to safety, to safeguard our clinical team and to safeguard our hospital, based on ICMR and the state government schemes, is what we were planning. And I'll discuss more on what we've been doing, on this as well, how we safeguarded our team. And the most important thing is how we motivated our workforce, which was the immediate need. Because the morale of the workforce was pretty down. I mean, their job security, their families, how we could, the last 3 months was a journey where we could motivate them. And because we feel as one unit, as one, right from the security to the senior cardiologist, I mean, keeping their mindset motivated, our goals need to be further, reworked, was our ultimate. And I'm proud that we could achieve that. And last 2 months we've been seeing a phenomenal result in our approach. I mean, patients have been, flowing in. I have told Sachin Bhai and his team that please excuse me if I get an emergency, because my cath lab is loaded today and my ICU is flooded. So keeping our safety and my patient safety is something need of the hour, which we learned. And the most important thing is skill development and mapping and skill development, which we did in April, where we trained our clinical and non-clinical team, going back to the to the ICU mechanical ventilation courses which we have done, and how do we approach respiratory problems, I mean with COVID and non-COVID, and especially keeping cardiology as the front line of our business. So it is a tough, challenging time, but we've seen a bigger opportunity coming into this, and I'm sure I've learned from my opportunity, which I could see that, and probably put that on our roadmap of for this 2020, and see how 2021 comes up to us.
Yeah, I think we all hear enough depressing news in the media. So putting together, 4 entrepreneurs, probably puts the amount of positivity in our community is important. And going next to you, Rohit, I was just thinking when Dr. Amit was speaking, that is the COVID your demonetization moment? Was the way it was for the PTM, that maybe you guys were the most prepared with the tech part, but maybe the adoption of technology. And if you can share what has been your journey during the COVID times, what has been the mental model, and also introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. This is, am I audible first? I guess that's the basic. Good. So, yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Rohit Ghosh. I'm one of the founding members of Cure.ai. It's an AI for medical imaging startup. Primarily chest X-ray and head CTs are the 2 flagship products we started back in 2016 in Bombay. In terms of COVID, I think personally it has been it's been a very difficult journey. I mean, because I'm a single person, I was staying in my own 1 BHK, and then suddenly I have to do my cooking, my cleaning, my everything while I'm on client calls. So there have been days where I'm on client calls and I'm like cooking my food. So it's been that way a very difficult journey, but a fun journey. I learned a lot of new things altogether. But now coming to the professional thing, yes, absolutely. I think 2000, I mean, since we started, obviously we have been working a lot, specifically chest X-rays in tuberculosis across A lot of countries, I think in Southeast Asia and Africa, we have been fairly been used in multiple places. But obviously the use case was always there. But what we saw with COVID was probably an inflection point in our journey where, I mean, today we are looking at almost 5,000 to 6,000 scans in a week, which are just processed for COVID across the globe, right? I mean, it just shot up. I mean, that was huge shot up, I think, when it happened. And today, if you, I mean, frankly, when March was there, and I remember that team meeting we had, and we were like thinking, you know, with COVID, how do we deal with it? I think one of the things was obviously with chest X-ray, we had the capability, we had the regulatory capability, I mean, the certification and all of that in place. The question was, how do we repurpose that and what else can we do? And I mean, it was spontaneous. I think entire team jumped at it, and yeah, and that was, I mean, obviously it was very hectic. I think first 1.5 months was every day, almost 24/7. All the entire team was working completely remotely, and that was challenge. But yeah, we are there. I mean, I think we have done some inflection point in our journey where we actually have seen tremendous uptake. And I genuinely think for healthcare and tech, a lot of companies, I mean, not just us, I mean, I have seen a lot of other tech companies in healthcare space as well, and this has been an inflection journey for a lot of them. So yeah, this has been a sort of demonetization moment for us in a way.
So I don't know if many people have told you the same, but since you're working in this domain for last 10 years using AI with healthcare, I think everybody is looking for a, you know, moment when the adoption, you know, happens. And I think, you know, crises are the times, you know, where, you know, people ask very few questions and they want solutions. And just to add that up, you know, since now all of you are probably more human because of this introduction to each one of us. So I also want to add quickly, you know, what I was doing during the lockdown time. So I was, you know, in the very first week or so, I called up my friend in the government and I told him that, boss, you always organize this hackathon at the national level. So we should do it for the COVID. So we did the first one and we had some, you know, 5,400 proposals that people gave from all over India. And we brought out 3 winners. And the first winner, you know, was a guy who participated in our previous similar meeting. So he was building an IoT solution and using monitoring of the heart. In fact, I mentioned it to Dr. Amit also, you know, that he could be a useful, you know, collaborator for Amit, Dr. Amit's practice. And the good thing about, you know, that hackathon experience was that having 10,000 people participate virtually, you know, and we did this in a week, you know, and I could have the jury from US, Singapore, and Netherlands. So virtual removed all the space and time barriers, you know, and now the Dutch people are trying to use this Indian person's technology. So they are willing to invest, you know, €250,000 in that company. So I was very happy, you know, facilitating, you know, these kind of conversations. And that's why I was also very happy to learn in the first panel that Dr. Satish Rath has $50 million. So I think we should, you know, make a plan, make a Nexus Mafia, whatever you may call, and get all that $50 million out from him, you know, and give him the right solutions. But anyway, so we did that one hackathon, then we did the second. On a professional level, we have just instituted a committee. It's called the Hospital Innovation Screening Committee. Dr. Singh already mentioned about it. So we will try to get all these people with the money, like people like Dr. Rath is part of that committee. And I assume people like you will, you know, make sure that the money is changing hands. So that was on the lighter side of it. But let me go strict to the topic because some people must be wondering, I have made it more like a living room chat than a serious panel discussion. So coming straight to our, you know, what is that we can offer, you know, to the community. So can I ask you, you know, to be very crisp and in 2 minutes, share with everyone what is your offering. So Dr. Partha, if I may go to you and start in the same order. Yeah.
Sure. So there are 2 offerings. There are several things, and you know, having time sometimes is also not a very good thing. So what happened, we walked out too many things. But I thought we'll restrict the discussion right now to two things, which I think is very important. And after hearing what the other panelists told, and probably Rohit will talk more about that. So I will have a less discussion on the chest X-ray what we have done, because now a lot of people have also done it. But the idea is there any way together we can go and talk about if there is a possibility or accepting this chest X-ray based COVID detection as one of the mass rapid detection process before we are sending the patient for the RT-PCR test, because as a country we will not able to do as many RT-PCR we wanted to do. And if we look at our R0 value, doubling number, doubling factor, whatever the days that we talk about, more test is the key that we all have understood. Now question is that what is the mechanism we have in our hand to do the more testing? And what we feel that as because chest X-ray is available everywhere, there is no infrastructure required for the government perspective. Otherwise, in private space also, it's a very low cost mechanism. So once the chest X-ray has been taken, it is uploaded in the tool. There are enough tool now available in the market, and that would definitely give a good idea of what is the suspected level of the person towards COVID. This is not a confirmatory test, but definitely it is going to tell to a great extent that the chances of this particular disease has hit the person and he is carrying the infection in his lung. He sometimes may not know that his lung is already infected. So that's one of the discussions. This is something we're trying to do with ICMR. I think, with Rohit and there are other organizations, we all should join hands together, and together we should go and talk to ICMR about it. Yesterday, I had a good discussion with one of the ICMR scientists. We debated, fighted, whatever, and then we thought that it is very important. We need to present the thoughts. At the day end, if the clinician feels that this may not be the best way to do it, that's okay. But then my question is that show me what's the next best. Till the time you have the next best, guys, do it, because that would save all of us from getting infected. Because if we know that who has a higher chance of carrying the COVID with them, and we can probably detect them in the earlier than otherwise. So that's one thing. Other interesting things, I must share. With another company called PAS Digital, I'm working as a startup. So we have worked out a solutions called a virtual visit or e-visit. Just to make sure there are too many visitors are not required to visit the patient in the hospital. Now that's another major challenge, right? In the COVID situation, the COVID patients are not to be visited. Now at the end, they are human beings. You cannot have a situation, you can't have anyone going and seeing the patient. Think about their family and all. At the same time, in a COVID hospital, it happened that the other patients who are non-COVID, as because the visitor management is restricted, that nobody is going to enter that hospital. It happened with my own brother, my younger brother who stays in Kolkata. Unfortunately, he got a heart attack and he has to get a angioplasty done. And this was the beginning of the COVID AMRI hospital, Kolkata. I know actually everybody in that hospital, including some of the lower receptionists even. In that situation, I could not even get my brother's wife to enter and see my brother for quite some time. With that amount of connection, right? But now think about the other situation where somebody has got no connect, and how you are going to see someone if they are in a need. Fortunately, this was a short stay. He was discharged in one and a half day after, so it was not a problem. But then we started thinking that is there anything that we can do? So that's the trigger point. And then we worked out a solution called the e-visit or a virtual visit, where by following the present methodology, the patient can definitely see the relatives, or relatives can see the patient. At the same time, the important part is that how care provider interaction is possible. The important thing is not about only seeing the patient. We also need to talk to the care providers, the doctors, the nurses, the other people. So that all has been worked out, and I'll be absolutely happy to look at if someone is interested to run a pilot at the earliest time possible and make this e-visit or virtual visit. We're still looking for a name. Probably we'll go for a context to find what is the best name and brand we can give it to it. But the solution, we are looking for a partner to work with. Thank you.
You will find many takers, of this solution, because I think the anxiety levels are very high when somebody who is a near and dear one admitted. So thank you for sharing this, Dr. Pata. So Dr. Kaushik, can you also share briefly what's keeping you awake during the nights?
Well, yeah, I just want to to focus on the current issues, like the whatever the healthcare workers are facing in the hospital at ground root level. With this, the health structure has almost changed. Every aspect has taken a new side, and in fact, the point of concern, the revenue generation, the chief cause of death, and the frequency of patients presenting with different complaints, they have altogether changed. So with this change, with this turn upside down of the system, I personally think we need to restructure the system. We need to attain something that is sustainable in terms of patient care, in terms of revenue generation. So I shall be talking in for two innovative ideas, if that goes, and practically I'm working on one of them, like restructuring of first of all, it is the restructuring of the whole hospital, where like with the coming orders of certain governments who have taken up the certain proportion of beds in the hospitals, like Delhi government has ordered 20% of beds. So now it has somewhere become a mixed kind of hospital. And with the literature being mentioned in past, it has been seen with these kind of mixing of hospitals, it has turned out to be hotspots. Hospital itself has turned out to be hotspots. In this regard, healthcare workers have been found to be affected, and it has resulted into shutdown of the hospital. So I suggest, and practically I'm working at my setup, I have suggested it to my HOD as well, like restructuring of the whole of the hospital, that by dividing of the hospital into zones: red zone, orange zone, and green zone. And in fact, the previous panels, they were also mentioning this kind of zoning. I've also my such article has been published in the Health Innova magazine, was been done by your company itself. So the zoning defines the red zone becomes a holding area. It is like healthcare workers work with the proper kits, proper PPE kits, and any patient who's a suspect with presenting with the respiratory illness, or maybe presenting with a minor low COVID score as well. The patient gets admitted there, and we immediately send the RT-PCR. Then if he is found to be negative, then he shifted to the orange zone. And now orange zone also, we follow the patient clinically, and we provide with the adequate equipments over there, so that, because I personally have seen at least 8 to 10 patients turning out negative at first test, and then turn to the green zone of the normal hospital, and then turning out to be positive after 10 days, now resulting into quarantine of almost 30 to 40 people all of a sudden. And after testing, even 5 to 8 healthcare workers got affected. So the idea is to introduce a buffer zone in between, following up the patients over there, and if suspected, doing a test again. With these kind of proposals, with these kind of suggestions, we definitely reduce the number of people getting affected who are providing the healthcare, and also we reduce the chances of infection among the staff who has been handling it. And with this system, we can even achieve a sustainable system for the elective procedures. Like the elective procedures, people, they should be advised a test uh, at the home setting itself, and then the day before the admission, the patient gets tested, and if he turns out to be negative, he can be transferred into orange zone and can be looked for another 1 day. And if he turns out to be negative in the first test, and there's no clinical symptom, then he can be put up for the procedure, or the elective procedure that is to be planned. And this kind of system, this proposal can also work between the hospitals, small setting hospitals. Like 3 of the hospital decide. Yes, you Sachin, you want to ask something?
Sharing that I have asked my colleague to share the article that you have written to everyone. So just to add the context of your proposal, what Dr. Kaushik is attempting is, to change the hospital setup, which is not an easy thing. And I imagine you will face a lot of resistance. And just to also share a bit of background, our conversation started when probably he had this bright idea, and where he was, let's say, slightly handicapped in how to make it realized. Like in case of Dr. Partha, you have a very clear go-to-market strategy in building your solution. But in case of Dr. Kaushik, it's probably more starting from a policy, and then eventually realizing to a product. So I think these are very interesting combinations, and I think at least in this conversation itself, we have other clinicians who can probably support Dr. Kaushik. So if it is okay, Dr. Kaushik, we come back to you in detail in the next round.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So coming to you, Dr. Amit, if I may ask you, how you are, kind of enabling the health sector with your solution. If you can give a short background on that and the impact.
Well, earlier, we discussed, Sachin, that we've been, adopting digital, approach to our cardiac intervention in acute emergency care. And, we've been having this rural digital program, which we've been running in our, pilot for the last 12 months, and we could see phenomenal, increase in footfalls to our hospital, and as well as a bigger impact which we have created during COVID. Well, touch wood, I mean Rajkot has been Saurashtra has been little on the greener zone, and the spread is little slow comparing the bigger metros. And as Dr. Kaushik had mentioned, that yes, hospital need to be prepared, need to have some kind of a change management in terms of infrastructure and approach. We have worked with the government to focus on, as the numbers spurt up, we need to be prepared. So in our journey of digital approach, we have focused on two way of approaching. Is we have launched our digital telemedicine app in the last week of March. I mean, we were the first company to launch it in March 23rd, just the day after the lockdown was mentioned by the government. And we could foresee that yes, a lockdown would be coming in, and a digital approach, telemedicine approach, would be the best solution to kind of cater to our patients who've been there. First we thought we'll cater this to our own patients, because they need not travel, they did not come to our hospital. But then we made it public. Yes, let's do it for everybody. I mean, so and then we went to B2C, then we went to B2B as well. I mean, B2C, yes, between patients and the doctors, between patients and among, doctors to doctors. So we have enabled this journey of digital approach, and we've got decent result. I mean, in our Saurashtra region. And I can vouch. I've saved at least more than 5 primary patients who've been having an acute MI, and I could have at least with this approach we could have we gave them advice so that they could reach to certain hospital at the nearest time, and they could reach to us as well. So this telemedicine has given a certain small mileage, and now with this telemedicine mileage, I mean, we are we have laid a 6-month roadmap how we enhance this telemedicine approach to the rural villages, to the district levels, to the even panchayat level, to an area even where there's a small population of about 500 or maybe 100, where my services are completely free of cost. We are giving it to the we have launched a program called Plexus Grameen Seva using digital approach, where any patient who can get in touch with us, any rural doctor, GP, physician, anyone can get in touch with this app. I mean, so at the primary level, I mean, we are just focusing on a primary emergency heart care, and we have a roadmap of how we're going to take this on a on a financial model, so that patients are benefited, and especially a hospital also need to ensure that our revenues are sustained. And like Dr. Kaushik had mentioned, yes, critical care is something which we all are focused on. I'm a critical care specialist as well, and then branched into cardiology. So for me, critical care is important. So, and in critical care, like what Dr. Partha had mentioned, that X-rays, yes, we have gone ahead with one more step. We are doing an X-ray, and we are doing a HRCT as well for suspected patients. I mean, I'm finding it very difficult to get a HRCT consulted. I mean, reporting an HRCT is the pain for me at this moment in my critical care. So with a digital approach, I'm sure there will be a lot of innovations which are going to come up, but these innovations need to be financially stable. I mean, end of the day, these innovations need to be comes at a cost, and someone has to pay for it. I mean, how? So the next burden which we all feel is how hospitals are going to be financially stable in their approach. And as a startup hospital, we feel that burden. But this digital approach has given me more approach, and so many patients are coming to me at this moment. I mean, we've been fortunate enough at Saurashtra to get this digital approach now implemented. So we have a rural digital clinic set up, and we have a digital app which is a cloud-based telemedicine app. And then there are quite a few innovations we're going to add on as we progress in our journey of digital cardiology approach to our mission of creating a digital Saurashtra into the global map. Cloud cardiology, rural cardiology, critical cardiology. So we've made the entire cardiac ICU been completely digitalized, monitored by doctors and specialists remotely. I mean, so that the frontline doctors are really not at the the receiving end of getting scared. So medical distancing is something which we have focused more on to safeguard our resource of intensivist cardiologists, even senior intensive nursing staff as well. So that, and second thing is constant operational efficiency. I mean this is something which we all feel this is the need of the hour, because our medical the entire world has failed because we have not been able to focus on what is the need of the hour. I mean, constant learning, constant putting that learning into our hospital, especially in critical care, is the need of the hour. And teaching and skill development for our clinical and non-clinical team, which we focused, and this is going to give us a bigger opportunity. And digital approach, well, Dr. Fatah said two approaches he has mentioned in his company. For us, yes, operational efficiency, clinical efficiency in our approach with our staff, and using digital tool as the way forward to to kind of scale up, to kind of reach out to the underserved areas is our business plan at this moment. And touch wood, I mean, we've been fortunate to get this gearing up at a very early stage and predict this coming up, and we could really put this in use. And we are open for collaborators, I mean, into cardiology or critical care, and we're going to do a pilot project one immediately in the next 1 month, where completely free e-ICU we're going to set up in a remote village, completely monitored from our hospital, completely free of cost from our end, ensuring that that hospital, at least some clinical team has been made available, at least using a digital approach, completely affordable, completely tech enabled. So I'm looking at suggestions and ideas and collaborators from companies, I mean, who can be part of my pilot project as well, to be part of this. And
the two suggestions there, Dr. Amit.
Please,
one, your article is due. You
yeah,
promised me, send me the case study. So one, we can socialize it more, so your cause is known to more people. Second, I think in general, I will not hesitate to make this comment that you are a super specialist doctor, but you come across more like a technology person. So I wonder, you have digital blood cells, not the red blood cells running in you. Your adoption of digital is I would say a very great example, and I really welcome. Yeah, I really welcome everyone who are looking for an opportunity to try out their ideas. It's very rare that you can have clinicians like Dr. Amit Raj, where at least those mental blockages are not there, and you can see how easily he is able to use the medical terminology as well as the cloud and whatever you can think of the state of the art. So
we also, to add on, we are doing with the government, I will not mention the which government, state government, but we are doing a pilot using a drone-based healthcare delivery system, and probably use even robotics within our ecosystem. So shortly, a couple of robots will be there with us, assisting us in our ICU, and drone based to reach out to the underserved areas. So these are the broad line heading, which I thought I'll just spell out. A pilot is on the roadmap. So we have got the team already signed off for this pilot, and let's see how we can get all the results.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
acute emergency, acute care, acute emergency heart attacks. Yeah.
So over to you, Rohit. Next, so what is your offering to the health sector, hospital community, and how do you see it fits to the the COVID crisis, post COVID? How can you ease up the situation?
Absolutely. I think so. As I was mentioning, so for us, we have been working for AI-based chest X-ray interpretation. I mean, it's been functional across 80 plus sites globally. A lot of it within India, Pakistan, across Southeast Asia, Africa, for TB. Now with COVID, obviously we saw that opportunity, and with COVID, actually now we are present in 10 countries just for COVID, and across I think 43, 44 places, hospital sites globally for COVID. So the question obviously is, what are we actually doing for COVID? So there are two pieces to it. So firstly, one use case is, for example, how Bombay Municipal Corporation, BMC, is using this, right? So BMC's concern is obviously, I mean, I'm based out of Mumbai, and it's the cases are on rise every day, right? So, which obviously Dr. Partha also mentioned earlier, the problem is if you have 100 patients to test, right? This 100 patients could be your contacts of registered people, could be people who are high comorbidity, or people who are elderly, or people in slum areas like Dharavi, right? So there are a lot of people you want to test, but you have just 15 or 16 say RT-PCR kits. The question is, how do you decide out of this 100 people, which 15 people would you give? Obviously, symptomatic people are definitely the people you would want to definitely give kits, followed by a percentage of people who are, probably comorbidity or highly, has a contact of positive patients. But in the rest of the population, this is asymptomatic people. And how do you decide out of them? How do you give them, right? So that's exactly what we are doing with Bombay Municipal Corporation and a few other countries as well outside India. What we are doing is setting up this in mobile chest X-ray van, where the van goes into areas like Dharavi. So there in Bombay, there are specifically two mobile screening vans, which go out into these remote areas. They screen people, and as soon as if they have a high or a medium score on chest X-ray, they're sent for an RT-PCR. If they're low on chest X-ray, the thing is obviously to understand is if there's no lung inflammation, you still would not see the patient. I mean, it could be asymptomatic and you do not have a lung inflammation, it would not show up on chest X-ray. So just having negative on chest X-ray cannot rule that patient out. So you have to still monitor that patient. So we do a follow-up chest X-ray on. So that's how in Bombay, at least what they have done is, I don't know if how many of you are aware of how Bombay's been tackling it, and it's been genuinely great, right? They have built an NSCI dome, which has got like a huge facility for quarantining patients. So specifically people from low resource geographies like Dharavi, where you cannot ask them to be home quarantined, right? So you have to send them to this dome facility. So there they get again their chest X-rays monitored over a period of time, and on day 7 and day 14, if their chest X-rays show normal, they're discharged. If any of those chest X-rays show AI says positive, high or medium score, they're sent for an RT-PCR. So that's the first use case. The second is primarily around patients who are already admitted in hospitals. And this is something we have seen uptake not only in India, US, Mexico, UK, Italy, Russia. So a lot of places, the problem that you're solving is once a patient is confirmed of COVID, right? In a critical care setup, how do you monitor that patient on a day-on-day basis? You cannot give RT-PCR. You can, HRCT is obviously an option, but I mean, sending a patient for a CT is altogether tough, right? I mean, you do it. So mobile chest X-ray is the most easiest way to do a follow-up of that patient. And that's exactly where we have been able to help extremely, because for a radiologist, I mean, as a human leader, it's very tough to give out an exact idea of percentage quantification of the lung that has been involved. A radiologist, for example, in Italy, before we deployed there, they were using radiologists were only able to give out a score like 0 to 25% involvement, 25 to 50, 50 to greater than 50% involvement. But with use of AI, what they can do is exactly quantify the percentage of lung involvement. It's 31%, 32. AI can exactly quantify and actually quantify that better than readers, because it's just nature of computer programs they are, right? So because we are able to do that better, the clinical decision support is much better when you have a robust AI, looking at that kind of progression monitoring. So that's the second use case where we have seen a huge uptake. I think those are the two major use cases, I would say, which.
Yeah, I think Rohit, you guys have been one of the good success stories out of India, at a global level. So you're definitely making country proud. So congratulations on that. And especially in the medical field, it is very difficult to get credibility because you need good publications, and it's a very long gestation period.
Exactly.
Anybody who is an entrepreneur in the medical side, needs to be made of 10 times more solid material than an entrepreneur in any other field. So hats off to you guys, all four of
So
you.
yeah, I think I just add that. I mean, for us, credibility. I completely. Thanks for bringing that point out, because credibility is one of the major reasons. I mean, you cannot go to NHS Trust and you can say that we have a solution. They obviously need a C certification. They want publication in medical journals. So for us, we have had, I mean, publications in Lancet, which is obviously the most critical, and then for COVID only, we had tested this out on a 11,000 patient database, right? And which had helped us get a C approval as well. So yeah, that's so critical, right? I mean, in a healthcare
Yeah,
setup,
I
you
think
should get that.
the whole medical sciences is, let's say, so risk averse that they have to build the checks and balances, and that makes
Absolutely.
the whole, domain difficult to enter. And I believe that's where collaboration is much more important. So all four of you, and let's say with 40 others, how can you collaborate, and how can you work together? I think is very important. Otherwise, most people will die in their journey, building an enterprise, because it's very, very difficult. So I think I can build on to the next question, and I would request you that we keep it very brief, so that if we can have questions from the audience, it will be very good. So I also request in the same way to the audience who are listening, if you can type your questions, and we can you can address directly to the panelists, and I can read them out, or you can ask a question which they can take up on their own. So I just want a last question here, and a very quick response from each one of you, starting again in the same order, is that we zoomed into your business and you are very clear on your own offering, but as you know that if we zoom out, your offering standalone will not work. So when you look at the ecosystem, do you have one or two, three quick recommendations that if the hospitals or the wider health sector can take up, may help the country, or the suffering that we are seeing right now can ease up? So Dr. Patha, back to you. What are your quick recommendations?
Absolutely, the public health system has to be taken up seriously. What happened is we are more today concerned about the curative aspect of the healthcare. There are a lot of research work, etc., and even the digitization is going more. What is happening for the curative part or inside the hospital care. But if you look at a public system at large, though there are certain initiatives, but if you look, those initiatives were restricted to some of the large NGO funded organizations, but they are not going to the grassroots level as much as it should have gone. This is a opportunity for us now, and the money required for this is not very high. The amount of money we are being talked about today, thousands of lakhs of crores of rupees is spent. A very fractional percentage of that spend actually can create a huge impact at the grassroots level if we make the digitization options available for the larger public health workers who are working on the ground. So that's where I think we should look at the investment, and we should put our technology over there. And lot many startup organization also need to look at that space. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you for keeping it short. I totally agree with your recommendation. Dr. Kaushik, what's your recommendation, because you are fighting the the inertia? So
my recommendation, my suggestion is mainly focused on the protection of the weapon which we have in the form of healthcare workers. With people getting affected, we are not going to win. It's going to become very tough to fight this battle. So what I have into my head is the measures to reduce infection or the exposure among the healthcare workers. In this regard, as I have suggested in my previous talk, that zoning of hospitals can actually help us out, and creating a buffer zone between the green area and the red area can definitely reduce the risk among the healthcare workers, and at the same time it can reduce the number of people getting affected accidentally. Also, these kind of zoning, as I was mentioning, can be implemented among the small hospitals. Like small hospitals collaborate among themselves. One of them start behaving like a red zoned hospital. Second one behaves like a orange zone hospital, and the third one behaves like a green zone hospital. Because it is always better to work rather than completely shut down. It can be a troublesome issue managing the logistics and managing the collaboration among the hospitals, because in the previous 6 months they have been the competitors of each other in the same location. But at the same time, looking at the current scenario, system is going towards the depreciation in terms of economics. So it's better to sustain, better to collaborate so as to sustain. Like a 50-bedded hospital can be converted into a red zone, and next 50-bedded can be converted into an orange zone, and next 50-bedded can be converted into a green zone. So this way we can work and at the same time protect our healthcare system and protect our weapon, that is the healthcare workers, which can actually prevent us. And another thing which I could not mention in the previous session, this might be of help to Dr. Amit. There are some kind of stethoscopes that are coming, digital stethoscopes. A few of my, like in fact myself is also a part of it. People have innovated those stethoscope, very basic microtone stethoscope, and they have connected some mic to it. And by connected that mic and people are recording it, that can be an awesome innovation in terms of your critical cardiac health in teleconsultation. People can be made to learn their put their stetho and record their auscultation findings, and they can be shared with the doctor, and rest of the teleconsultation can be done. That can in fact, me myself is working on one such project. Once we get our data and we can minimal data, then we'll try to publish it somewhere, and maybe Dr. Amit, I connect you regarding this.
I'm happy that you are already cross connecting, and that's the one of the agenda. And just a quick comment on you, Dr. Kaushik. I think there are many ideas beyond the zoning aspect, which I was wondering that how mobile chest X-ray that was mentioned by Rohit, could help in your setting. So you may consider the wider theme of infection prevention, or as also was covered in the previous panel, and maybe think of many innovative ways that you can probably put in the annexure of your work, wherein hospitals are using to control the infection. So that may apart from giving architecture, you may also give some like a prescriptive startups and innovative solutions like you just mentioned to Dr. Amit. So with that, Dr. Amit, what's your advice to the wider ecosystem? How can we get out of the situation we are in?
Well, I have a few suggestions, and my my thoughts on my is we need to have for the current scenario and for a longer the current situation and for a longer tenure. For the current situation, yes, we need to have some kind of a disruptive collaboration among healthcare providers, hospitals, and with government officials to address to this issue. And the second thing, which I've been only focusing on rural primary healthcare as my mission. Our rural primary healthcare needs to be completely revamped. I mean, with my approach of digitalizing complete rural healthcare, so there we see a lot of healthcare delivery completely getting revamped, and we should focus on the primary healthcare, that is which needs to be digitalized and looked after at this moment. And I'm sure I mean we are heading towards it as well. I mean so disruptive collaboration with medtech, IT, with so this kind of because I cannot per se handle the clinical part, the IT part, the governance part, the policy part. So it has to be, focused on one domain, yes, with multiple collaborators, so that we all win together and ensure that our focus on primary healthcare, acute emergency at this moment needs to be addressed, which is the key important take-home message we all need to kind of look at. And this kind of forums where Sachin, you all have organized, I mean sure people would definitely come out and kind of look at kind of a collaboration which is going to make a bigger difference to our society. And like Dr. Partha had mentioned, yes, the investment in primary healthcare, yes, I mean I've seen my journey for the last 12 months, how we started with one clinic and now we have 30 clinics. So our journey is sustained. I mean, we're going to launch another 10 more, we're going to take another 10 more villages, within our system for this month, and next month we have another 15 more villages. So the cost is really something which is coming down. But the idea is, yes, this energy and this motivation, we all need to collaborate together to bring out the best change within the entire state, city, or the nation.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, and we are always there behind you, supporting you firmly, and we look forward to get more case studies from you on the ground, so that we can inspire more people to look at those uncharted territories. As Dr. Partha also mentioned, we need to look at other side of the coin, not the curative also, but the preventive. And one of the most inspiring thing that I read last year in December was a document called as Nordic Health Vision 2030, and they talked about they have spent 10% of the GDP on healthcare. So what Dr. Singh was mentioning, we spend 1% of our GDP, so that's a difference in terms of the money. But they spend 10% of the GDP on curative, and 95% of that money is being spent on disability adjusted life years of 65 years old and above. So they have come to a conclusion that they cannot work in that model anymore. So their countries cannot have 20% of GDP in health, and they will soon become like US. So they are contemplating to put 5% of the GDP in preventive health. And when you put 5% of the money of a country in preventive healthcare, then you start talking, because otherwise these are all ideal, visions. If you don't have money in something, right, the entrepreneurs will not, easily chase it. So I don't know whether, the Nordics will soon put that 5% money, and your apps and the digital architectures that you're developing here maybe soon can be used elsewhere as well. That's the beauty of digital. But I would suggest, if you are interested in this aspect, you could explore this report. And preventive is largely about monitoring, as you already are doing in your work. So over to you, Rohit. What's your wish list?
No, absolutely. I completely agree with, I think there's a consistent point I think everyone raised, which is primarily around supporting primary health, right? And primary healthcare facility. And that I so agree on. I mean, based on our experience with working, in other parts of the world, and specifically like, systems like NHS or, UK, it's so strong in itself. I just genuinely feel that and digital is actually, I mean, the way, if you really look at the scope of innovation, I think a lot of it actually lies in grassroots than in, top up, because that's where you need help. That's where you can actually bring change, right? And this is something we had realized with our TV work as well, that, it's actually the change that you bring there which actually impacts, right? I mean, for example, some of the stories we have is primarily from, in very remote district in Kota, where we have deployed it for TB. I mean, patients used to come, almost spend one day to just come, and their daily wage earners, right? If you travel one day and then you have to come again for microbiological test another day, it just is not sustainable. And I mean, we have some of those interviews, and with using some of the digital health, when you can reduce that time to diagnosis by just 3 hours, they come in one day, get the results, and go back. It's just genuinely, in a grassroots level, so much more powerful. So that's obviously one thing I completely agree on. The second thing which I have is, and this again based on other ways, I mean, I've seen innovation happening. What happened, for example, in India is that primarily a lot of work on TB, for example, got completely stopped. I know so many stories I have been reading where patients who have other chronic diseases also, they have not been able. I think Dr. Partha also mentioned about it. So somewhere I genuinely think that whole ramping up of healthcare facility definitely needs to happen, right? I mean, this is just not sustainable. I think where we are right now, obviously higher investment into the healthcare space would definitely bring that thing, I think. So yeah, but I think it's not just about going digital, but also be able, once you go digital, obviously what happened is you get more cases, you have more patients, you have more patients to actually look after. So you should also have that facility somewhere back there to support that. So I think those are my general thoughts around how we should actually be able to get there.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. I think we are very close to our planned scheduled time of this panel, so I don't want to stretch. As you know, the attention span when you are doing virtual meetings is not very high, so already putting people for a 2-hour conversation is a big ask. But I think to bring change, when we start from larger hospitals, like what we heard from Esther, putting a $50 million fund to help startups, invest. This is what we learned last year in Sweden. So we were visiting a lot of large hospitals in Sweden, and for 15 years they have been running innovation departments. So their core job is to get money. So they are public hospitals, so they don't make money. So they only have cost heads. So it's like being AIIMS. But they are making now 10 to 20% of their money. The money that they are generating is from intellectual property. So can you imagine, a hospital has a lot of patents, and for this they have been doing this for 15 years. So you could be a Cure.ai, or you could be a very large medical company, and hospital can have a role in enabling that innovation and have intellectual property. Imagine, so there we saw a model wherein they not only identify the problem, they go to researchers, get the scientific validation done, get everything done, and license it to an entrepreneur to build an enterprise out. That's the we were really amazed looking at that kind of innovation model. And I think if we can put this kind of an innovation model here in India with like-minded people, so I count on people like you, that you would play some instrumental role, because you are people who are T-shaped, deep in your own domain, but as well having horizontal interest. So whether you are a doctor come techie or techie come doctor, so you are the tribe which can make it happen. So thank you again for your thoughts, and I look forward to keep discussing with you on these. That's it from my side.
Thank you, Sachin. I must say, excellently moderated discussion. We are having a living room chat, but at the same time, the content is super. We hardly see a combination of both.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, Sachin. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and just genuinely thanks a lot for moderating this so well and getting all the thoughts in place.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sachin. This has been a kind of brainstorming session for me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, VK Singh sir. Thank you, Sachin bhai. I mean, it's been really honor, and thank you, panelists. I mean, please, Partha bhai, Kaushik bhai, and Rohit. I mean, it's been inspiring hearing you all. I look forward to immediately get in touch with you all, work on some kind of this.
Thank you.
Okay, looking forward.
A measurable outcome of this panel would be one of you partnering with each other. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Always have you with us. You and VK Singh always with us, because without your support, especially for me, last 10 months has been a journey, such motivational journey from you all.
Okay, have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.